I bought my own house after everyone betrayed me. Now my ex-wife, my sister, and even my parents are furious. They want back in. But some doors are meant to stay closed forever. I never imagined my life would split so cleanly into a before and an after. For years, everything felt blurred together: work, marriage, family, expectations, all of it pressing down on me like weight I didn't know how to set aside. Back then, I thought endurance was love. I thought staying quiet meant strength. I thought if I worked harder, sacrificed more, and asked for less, eventually things would balance out. They didn't. 3 years ago, I was married to Madison. From the outside, we looked fine. No screaming matches, no public drama. Just a normal couple trying to build a future. At least that's what people assumed. What they didn't see was how slowly a person can be worn down, not by fists or shouting, but by comparison, disappointment, and silence. I was a mechanic earning around $65,000 a year. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work. I fixed engines, rebuilt transmissions, and solved problems with my hands. Cars came in broken and they left running. There was satisfaction in that. I came home tired, sure, but proud. Madison never shared that pride. It started subtly. We'd be sitting together in the evenings and she'd scroll through her phone, stopping every so often to show me pictures of houses, big ones, bright kitchens, hardwood floors that gleamed like mirrors. "Look at this," she'd say, holding the phone inches from my face. "Isn't it beautiful?" I'd nod. "Yeah, it is." Then came the sigh. Always the sigh. "Samantha's husband bought her something like this," she'd add casually. "Granite countertops, open concept. He really takes care of her. She never said you don't. She didn't have to." The message landed anyway. At first, I told myself she was just dreaming. Wanting more wasn't a crime, right? But soon I realized these weren't shared dreams. They were reminders, measurements. Every picture was proof that someone else's husband was better than me. I tried to close the gap. I picked up overtime whenever it was available. Took weekend side jobs, fixing cars in driveways and parking lots. I came home sore, greasy, exhausted, but hopeful. I stopped spending money on myself. No new clothes, no nights out. No hobbies. When money was still tight, I sold my motorcycle. That bike had been with me longer than Madison. It was freedom on two wheels, my escape when life got heavy. She watched me sell it without a word of protest. I thought that meant she appreciated the sacrifice. She didn't. Nothing I did ever moved the goalposts. If I earned more, she wanted more. If I saved, she wanted faster results. If I rested, she said I was lazy. If I worked late, she said I wasn't present. I was always falling short of a standard that kept changing. The vacation was my breaking point. I planned it quietly. Months of saving, cutting corners, telling myself this would remind her of us, of why we married in the first place. I surprised her with it one evening, holding out the confirmation email like a peace offering. She smiled, polite, controlled. "That's nice," she said, not excited. Not grateful, just nice. The trip itself felt hollow. She spent more time on her phone than with me, laughing at messages she wouldn't explain, turning the screen away when I walked into the room, saying she was just talking to friends. I knew something was wrong, but I didn't want to be that guy. The insecure husband, the one who imagines problems. So I stayed quiet. Again, one night, lying next to her in the dark, I realized something that scared me more than anger ever could. I felt invisible. When we returned home, the truth didn't bother hiding anymore. I came back early one afternoon. The house was quiet in a way it shouldn't have been. I walked into the bedroom and found Madison in our bed with Evan, the yoga instructor she'd mentioned too casually. Too often, neither of them scrambled. Neither of them apologized. "You're never here anyway," Madison said, like she was explaining a missed appointment. "Evan actually pays attention to me." That sentence hollowed me out. The divorce was ugly. She fought for everything. Claimed she'd sacrificed her career for our marriage. I almost laughed when I heard that. Almost. She worked part-time at a boutique and complained about it constantly. But now it was suddenly a noble sacrifice. Lawyers got involved. Money vanished. Peace disappeared completely. But the deepest cut didn't come from Madison. It came from my sister. Catherine, we've been close our whole lives. I babysat her kids, fixed her car without charging her, loaned her money when her husband was out of work. I never kept track. Family didn't keep score when she sat across from me and said, Madison told me everything. My stomach dropped. How you never bought her anything nice, she continued. Maybe if you'd been a better husband, she wouldn't have needed to find happiness elsewhere. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. It never came. My own sister was blaming me for being cheated on. I thought my parents would step in, defend me, at least acknowledge that what happened was wrong. Instead, my mother sighed and said, marriage is work. Maybe you both made mistakes. That was the moment something inside me went quiet. I wasn't being supported. I wasn't being protected. I was being asked to carry blame that wasn't mine just to keep the peace. I realized then that I was alone in a room full of people who claimed to love me. So I left. I sold what little I had left, packed my car, took a job no one wanted on an oil rig in North Dakota. It wasn't heroic. It was survival, 18 months of 14-hour shifts, freezing wind that cut through bone, a tiny trailer shared with men who barely spoke and never cleaned. I worked, slept, and worked again. It was brutal, but it was honest. $120,000 a year, almost no expenses. I lived on ramen and protein bars. Every paycheck went straight into savings. Every debt got paid off. There was no one criticizing me, no one comparing me, no one reminding me of what I lacked. For the first time in years, I felt steady. When I finally came back, I wasn't the man they remembered. I had nearly $200,000 in cash and perfect credit. More importantly, I had clarity. I started house hunting quietly, no announcements, no shared links. Then I saw it, 42 Maple Street. The house Madison used to show me on her phone, the one she said I'd never afford. Hardwood floors, granite countertops. Everything she'd ever sighed over. I didn't hesitate. I offered $300,000 cash, no inspection. 2-week closing. Sometimes life doesn't give you closure through apologies. Sometimes it hands you keys instead. I didn't tell anyone about the offer, not a single soul. No family group chats, no old friends, no victory laps. I signed the papers quietly, like a man handling something fragile, because I knew if word got out too soon, it would be poisoned by opinions, entitlement, and guilt before it ever became mine. The seller accepted within hours, $300,000 cash. No inspection. 2 weeks to close. The realtor's voice trembled when she called me, not with concern, with excitement. Deals like that don't come along often. I kept my responses short, professional. Inside, something calm and powerful settled into place. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. It was alignment. For once, my effort matched my outcome. The days leading up to closing felt unreal. I drove by the house more than I should have. Parked across the street, engine off, just staring. The place looked exactly like it did in those photos Madison used to shove in my face, only now it wasn't a symbol of what I lacked. It was proof of what I'd earned. Hardwood floors catching the light through the windows. A wide front porch. A kitchen big enough to breathe in. On closing day, I sat alone at the table. No smiling spouse. No parents beaming with pride. Just me, a pen, and years of silence finally paying off. When the keys slid across the table, I felt something loosen in my chest. Not joy, not yet. Relief, deep, steady relief. I owned something that couldn't be taken from me, not emotionally, not legally, not by guilt. I moved fast after that. I hired the best moving company in town. The kind with clean uniforms, polished trucks, and a reputation everyone recognized. I didn't cheap out. For once, I didn't have to. Moving day was deliberate. Almost ceremonial. I made sure the trucks were parked right out front, visible from both ends of the street. Neighbors slowed their cars. A couple of them watched from their porches. I didn't wave. I just supervised calmly, checking items off a list. For years, I'd been invisible. Now, without saying a word, I was making a statement. The realtor couldn't help herself. She posted on Facebook, "Congratulations to our mystery cash buyer on 42 Maple Street. Closed in just 2 weeks." Within an hour, my phone started buzzing. Madison. Was first, oh my God, who bought it? I'm dying to know. Catherine followed. Saw someone bought your dream house. What a coincidence, right? Then my mother. Do you know the new owners? Such a beautiful place. I didn't reply to a single message. Silence is powerful when you finally stop using it. Against yourself, I spent my first night in the house alone, sleeping on a mattress on the floor. No curtains yet, no furniture beyond the basics. But when I woke up the next morning and sunlight poured across those hardwood floors, I smiled. Not because it was luxurious, but because it was quiet. No sighs, no comparisons. No disappointment hanging in the air. Just space. That weekend, I threw a housewarming party, not a big one. Just enough people to fill the rooms with energy. Co-workers. From the rig, a few old friends who never took sides. Kai, a close friend who'd stuck with me through the worst of it. I hired catering. Music played low but steady. Laughter echoed off the walls. I didn't invite my family. I knew they'd come anyway. They always did when they smelled something they felt entitled to. Madison walked in first. She froze just inside the doorway, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. She looked around slowly, like she was afraid the house might vanish if she blinked too hard. Her hand brushed the kitchen island, the same one she'd once sighed over on a phone screen. This place is incredible, she whispered. How? Did you? Then she saw me, standing near the back, drink in hand, completely at ease. Hello, Madison, I said calmly. Her face drained of color. Catherine came in next, her kids trailing behind her. She recovered faster, forcing a smile like this was all perfectly normal. We heard about the party, she said. This house is amazing. My parents followed, carrying a bottle of wine, acting like invited guests. Like nothing had ever fractured. Between us, for a moment, no one spoke. Then Madison stepped closer. How did you afford this? I took a slow sip of my drink. Oil rigs, she blinked. Oil rigs? Turns out, I continued evenly, when you're not supporting a cheating wife and funding someone else's lifestyle, you can save quite a bit. The room went quiet, Madison's eyes filled with tears. I made mistakes, she said softly, but this was our dream house. I nodded. You're right. She looked hopeful for half a second, right before you told me I'd never afford it, I added. Right before you found someone you thought could. Her shoulders sagged. Catherine jumped in. Come on, don't do this. We're family. I looked at her for a long moment. Long enough for the words she'd said to me months earlier to replay in my head. Family doesn't choose cheating spouses over their own blood, I replied. I turned slightly. Kai, he stepped forward immediately. Please escort these people out, my mother gasped. This is cruel. No, I said calmly. This is boundaries. As they were walked toward the door, Madison turned back one last time. Don't you think you're being vindictive? I looked around my home, the sunlight, the space, the peace. This, I said quietly, is just me living my best life. Without any of you in it? The door closed behind them with a sound that felt final. They've been calling ever since. Madison says she's been evicted. Says she wants to work things out. Catherine needs a place to stay. My parents think I'm cold, unforgiving. Maybe I am, but I've learned something they never did. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some doors aren't meant to reopen. And sometimes the greatest success isn't proving them wrong, it's never needing their approval again. The calls didn't stop after that night. If anything, they multiplied. Missed calls, voicemails, long messages sent at odd hours like guilt had insomnia. I didn't block anyone at first. Not because I wanted to hear them, but because I wanted to be sure of something. I wanted to see if any of them would say the one thing that actually mattered. None of them did. Madison cried on the phone, her voice breaking in familiar places like she was reading from a script she'd rehearsed years ago. She said she was scared. She said things had fallen apart after Evan. She said she'd been confused back then, and that time had given her clarity. Funny how clarity always arrives after consequences. Catherine's messages were different. Practical, urgent. She needed help. Her marriage was strained. Money was tight. She reminded me of everything I'd done for her in the past. As if generosity were a contract I'd signed in blood. My parents took turns. One day disappointment, the next day concern. Then guilt dressed up as love. They said I was holding on to anger, that I was letting bitterness define me. That family forgives. What they never said was we were wrong. That silence told me everything. I spent my days settling into the house, not decorating aggressively, just living. I cooked in that kitchen slowly, deliberately. Every meal felt like a small victory. I sat on the porch in the evenings, listening to the neighborhood breathe. Kids riding bikes, dogs barking in the distance. Ordinary life uninterrupted. Peace has a sound. Most people just don't recognize it because they've never lived without noise. One afternoon, I found a box I hadn't unpacked yet. Old photos, wedding pictures, family gatherings, smiles that looked convincing enough to fool even me back then. I went through them carefully, not with anger, but with distance. Like examining a past life that belonged to someone else. That's when it hit me. I wasn't grieving them anymore. I was grieving the version of myself who thought love meant endurance without limits. A week later, Madison showed up alone. No warning, no text. Just her standing on my porch, eyes red, holding nothing but desperation. I didn't invite her in. I just need to talk. She said, "You're talking," I replied. She swallowed. I messed up. I know that now. I thought I wanted more, but what I really wanted was attention. And I lost everything because of it. I waited. "You don't understand," she continued. "When I see you now, the house, what you've built, it's like I woke up too late." "That's not my fault," I said quietly. She nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I don't have anywhere to go." I looked past her, at the street, the trees, the life I'd finally stabilized. "I know," I said. "And I'm still not letting you in." Her face crumpled, not in anger this time, but realization. "The kind that doesn't fade. You really changed," she whispered. "No," I corrected. I stopped shrinking. She left without another word that night. I slept better than I had in years. A few days later, Catherine tried a different tactic. She came with the kids. They stood on the porch, shifting their weight, confused but obedient. Catherine smiled like she was offering peace. "I thought you'd want to see them," she said softly. That one hurt. Because it was calculated, I knelt down, smiled at the kids, asked them about school, told them I loved them. Then I stood up. "This isn't fair to them," I said. "Don't use them to cross boundaries you already broke." Her smile vanished. "So you're just done with us?" "I'm done being blamed for other people's choices," I replied. She left angry. I stayed steady. My parents came last. They didn't knock. They rang the bell and waited like authority still lived in their posture. My father spoke first. "We didn't raise you to be like this," I nodded. "You raised me to be responsible. I am." "This bitterness will eat you alive," my mother added. I met her eyes. What ate me alive was being told to accept disrespect for the sake of peace. They didn't argue after that. They just looked tired. When they left, something closed quietly inside me. Not a door slammed. Just a chapter. Ending. Weeks passed, then months. The calls slowed. The messages stopped. Life expanded. I started fixing things in the house myself. Small projects, shelves, a workbench in the garage. My hands remembered who I was. With every nail driven, every measurement taken, I reclaimed something simple and grounding. One evening, sitting alone in the living room, I realized something unexpected. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. Not free because I owned a house. Not free because they regretted their choices. Free because I no longer needed to prove my worth to people who only valued me when I was convenient. The man they wrote off the failure. The disappointment, the one who wasn't enough. He built a life without them. Life didn't ask for permission. The strange thing about cutting people off is that the world doesn't collapse the way they swear it will. No lightning strikes, no sudden loneliness that swallows you whole. What actually happens is quieter and far more unsettling for those who depended on your silence. Life goes on. I fell into a routine without even trying. Early mornings, coffee on the porch, the sound of the neighborhood waking up around me. Work during the day, steady and focused. Evenings spent fixing small things around the house or just sitting still, letting my mind rest without being pulled. in a dozen directions by other people's expectations. That stillness scared me at first. For years, chaos had been my baseline. Criticism, guilt, pressure, those things had filled every empty space. When they disappeared, I didn't know what to do with the quiet. It felt undeserved, temporary, like something bad was waiting just around the corner to remind me I didn't get to keep good things, but nothing came. Instead, something else showed up. Confidence. Not the loud kind. Not the kind that needs witnesses. The kind that settles in your chest and says, "You're okay now." The kind that doesn't flinch when the phone buzzes, or doesn't a month after the party. I ran into an old acquaintance at the grocery store. Someone who'd known Madison and me back when things were still normal. "I heard you bought that house," he said, eyebrows raised. "Didn't expect that," I smiled politely. "Most people didn't," he hesitated. "Must have felt good showing them." That assumption followed me everywhere. That I did it to prove something, to hurt someone, to win. The truth was simpler and harder for people to accept. I didn't buy the house to show them anything. I bought it because I finally stopped believing. Then that distinction mattered more than anyone realized. News travels fast in small circles. People reached out, some out of genuine curiosity, others because success has a way of making people reassess old opinions. A few even apologized for not seeing it sooner. I accepted those apologies without ceremony. Not because they healed anything, but because I didn't need to carry resentment anymore. I had something better to carry, momentum. One night, while organizing the garage, I found the old helmet from my motorcycle, scratched, faded, useless without the bike itself. I held it for a long time, remembering how it felt to ride without destination, wind, noise, freedom. A week later, I bought another motorcycle. Not the same model, not the same color. This one wasn't about escape, it was about choice. I rode it through empty back roads, not running from anything, just moving forward. That's when I realized something else. I hadn't lost my family all at once. They lost me slowly, every time they chose comfort over truth, blame over accountability, and silence over defense. I gave them years to notice. They noticed only when I stopped giving. Madison tried again after that. A long email this time, carefully written. Apologies stacked like bricks, hoping enough of them would build a bridge back to me. She said therapy had opened her eyes, that she finally understood how she'd hurt me, that seeing me succeed forced her to confront her own emptiness. There it was, even in reflection. It still came back to her. I didn't reply, not because I wanted to punish her, but because the version of me she was reaching for didn't exist anymore. And I refused to resurrect him, just so she could feel better about burying him in the first place. Catherine's situation worsened. Mutual friends told me bits and pieces. Financial strain, arguments, her husband resentful, tired of being compared the way Madison once compared me. Funny how patterns repeat when no one takes responsibility. One evening, she sent a single message. I didn't realize how much you carried for all of us. I stared at it for a long time, then I typed back, I did, and that's why I stopped. That was the last message we ever exchanged. My parents retreated into polite distance. Holiday texts, short calls. No more lectures. No more advice. I think in their own way, they finally understood they'd pushed too hard and too late, but understanding doesn't erase damage. It just explains it. As the months passed, the house stopped feeling like a statement and started feeling like a home. Friends dropped by without tension. Laughter returned without calculation. I hosted dinners where no one compared, criticized, or sighed at what wasn't good enough. Sometimes late at night, I'd walk through the rooms with the lights off, just feeling the space. The walls didn't echo with disappointment. The floors didn't absorb arguments. The silence felt earned. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who thought love meant proving himself endlessly, who believed rest had to be justified, who mistook patience for weakness. I wished I could tell him one thing: you don't need to be chosen by people who only value you when you bleed. One afternoon, I ran into Madison again, completely unplanned. Different grocery store. Different aisle, Same pause when we recognized each other. She looked tired. Not dramatically broken, just worn. Like someone who'd spent too long chasing the wrong things and finally ran out of energy. You look good, she said. So do you, I replied. It was polite, neutral, true enough. She hesitated. I hear you're doing really well. I nodded. I am. She waited for more. An invitation, a memory. A crack. There was none. I guess I never really knew you, she said finally. I considered that. You knew the version of me that kept shrinking to fit. She nodded slowly. I don't think I ever thanked you. For everything you tried to do. That's okay, I said. I thanked myself. We parted without drama. No tears, no accusations. Just two people acknowledging the end of a road they'd already left behind, driving home. I felt lighter than I expected, not because I'd won, because I was done. That night, I sat on the porch again, watching the lights flicker on in neighboring houses, different lives, different struggles. Same illusion that success, love, and worth come from other people's approval. I knew better now. Worth isn't granted, it's claimed, and once you claim it, you don't hand it back to people who never protected it in the first place. Time has a way of exposing truths that arguments never can. As weeks turned into months, I started noticing how differently I moved through the world. Not rushed, not defensive, not constantly bracing for the next disappointment. I wasn't proving anything anymore, and that, strangely enough, made people uneasy. At work, my supervisor pulled me aside one afternoon. You seem different, he said, not unkindly. More focused. I am, I replied. He nodded slowly, like he was filing that away. A few weeks later, I was offered more responsibility, better hours, a raise I didn't have to beg for. Turns out confidence shows up in places you don't expect. When you finally stop apologizing for existing, I used the extra money to finish the house properly. Nothing flashy, just intentional. Furniture that felt solid. Tools organized the way I liked them. A guest room that stayed empty by choice. That room mattered more than I expected. For years, my space had never been fully mine. There was always someone else's comfort to prioritize, someone else's needs to anticipate. Now, the emptiness of that room wasn't loneliness, it was control. I started saying no more. To extra favors, to emotional labor, to conversations that felt like traps disguised as concern. Every no felt strange at first, like I was breaking an unspoken rule. Then it started to feel necessary. Then it felt natural. One evening, an old friend asked me something that stuck. Do you ever regret it? He said, cutting him off like that. I thought about it carefully. Regret implies I lost something valuable. I regret not doing it sooner, I answered. That surprised him. It surprised me too, but it was true, because once the dust settled, I could finally see the pattern clearly. Madison didn't just want a better life, she wanted a better comparison. Catherine didn't want fairness, she wanted comfort without accountability. My parents didn't want truth, they wanted harmony, even if it came at my expense. And I had been the glue holding it all together. Glue gets used up. One night, I had a dream about the oil rig, the cold, the noise, the exhaustion. I woke up sweating, heart racing. For a moment, I thought I was back there counting hours, telling myself it would be worth it someday. Then I remembered. I was home. I walked barefoot across the hardwood floors, poured a glass of water, and stood in the quiet kitchen. The granite countertop felt cool under my hand. Solid, real. I didn't escape my old life. I outgrew it. Catherine tried one last time after that. Not directly through my parents. A classic move. She's struggling, my mother said over the phone. You've always been the strong one. I closed my eyes. Being strong doesn't mean being available. Silence. Families help each other, she added. They do, I agreed. But families also don't blame victims for other people's choices. That ended the conversation. After that, something shifted. The pressure eased. The expectation faded. It was like they finally accepted that the version of me they relied on was gone and wasn't coming back. I didn't celebrate that realization. I respected it, because walking away isn't dramatic when it's necessary. It's just One Saturday morning. I sat on the porch with coffee and watched the sun climb slowly over the houses across the street. I thought about the younger me, the man who sold his motorcycle, swallowed insults, and believed love was something you earned through exhaustion. I wished he could see this moment. Not the house, not the money. The peace, the steadiness, the certainty that no one gets to define your worth if they weren't willing to protect it when it mattered. People still talk. I hear things. Some say I changed. Some say success went to my head. Some say I became cold. Let them. I know the truth. I became clear. About who I am? Clear about what I tolerate. Clear about the difference between loyalty and self-erasure, and once that clarity settles in, you stop chasing validation from people who only notice you when you stop serving them. That night, as I locked the front door and turned off the lights, I smiled, not out of spite, not out of pride. Out of certainty. This life is mine, and I'm finally living it on my own terms. The house itself became a quiet witness to my transformation. Every room held a memory of struggle, sacrifice, and finally, reclamation. The living room, where I once imagined parties with judgmental eyes everywhere, now felt expansive and calm. The kitchen, the very space Madison had once obsessed over, became my sanctuary. Cooking there was no longer a performance, it was therapy. Chopping vegetables, simmering sauces, the hum of the refrigerator, the gentle clink of utensils against the granite, it all reminded me I could create comfort without permission. Friends started visiting more regularly. Not family, friends, people who appreciated the man I had become, not the man they thought they could shape. We laughed, we joked. We played cards in the evenings, music filling the air, lights dimmed to the perfect glow. There was no comparison, no hidden agenda, just simple, unpressured joy. I realized how much I'd craved that for years and how far I had walked in the dark to find it. Madison's presence lingered longer than I expected. She called, texted, tried emails with carefully constructed apologies and pleas for reconciliation. "I know I hurt you," she wrote. "I've changed. We can start over." Every message was meticulous, as if she thought the right words could erase past betrayals. I read them once, twice, and then archived them. I didn't respond, because I wasn't the man she remembered. The version of me who bent, begged, and apologized endlessly had ceased to exist. Catherine attempted one more approach, too. She came by with the kids on a bright Sunday morning, hoping perhaps my affection for them would bend my resolve. I greeted the children warmly, asked about school and friends, and even smiled. But when Catherine tried to step inside, I put a gentle hand on the door. "This isn't fair to them," I said. "You cannot use them to cross boundaries that were broken long ago." Her face flickered between disbelief and anger before she finally understood. She left quietly, muttering under her breath, "Her." Children reluctantly following. My parents' interference dwindled gradually. They stopped calling to lecture or guilt me. Their messages became shorter, less frequent. Holiday greetings without expectation. I think in their own way they learned that boundaries aren't punishments, they're shields. They weren't happy about it, but the man they thought they could mold was gone. Replaced by someone who refused to shrink again, I threw myself into small projects around the house. The garage got a proper workbench. The yard was landscaped. With care, shelves went up, paint was touched up. With each task, each measure of labor, I felt a sense of permanence that no argument or betrayal could shake. For the first time, every screw I drove and every nail I hammered felt like reclaiming a piece of myself that had been ignored for too long. I found an old motorcycle helmet tucked in a box from years past. The scratches told stories of freedom and youthful recklessness. I smiled, remembered the wind on the back roads, the way my chest felt alive on those rides. I bought a new bike soon after, not to escape, not to prove anything. Simply because I could. I rode without expectation, without anyone's judgment. Only the road ahead and the quiet hum of the engine under me. Life began to stretch out in calm, even rhythms. Grocery runs were no longer exercises in avoidance. Walks in the neighborhood no longer included defensive posturing. Sleep came naturally, uninterrupted by worry over others' opinions. Every day reminded me that independence isn't just about earning or saving. It's about being free from the pressure to constantly justify your existence, and yet reminders of my past life would surface. An acquaintance would remark on my success. A neighbor would mention how quickly I closed on the house. Social media occasionally pinged with hints of their curiosity, but I didn't react. I didn't need to. Their recognition, or lack thereof, no longer dictated my satisfaction. That power had shifted entirely to me. I started noticing the subtle ways people responded when they realized I was no longer available for manipulation. Some admired it, others were uncomfortable, some resented it. But that discomfort was a reminder that boundaries carry weight, and weight brings respect when wielded consistently. Madison's final attempts to re-enter my life came in sporadic bursts, carefully worded emails, late-night calls, and even indirect messages through mutual friends. She claimed clarity, change, and understanding. But I had clarity of my own. I had learned that change expressed after the fact, when the consequences have already been absorbed, isn't always sincere. It's often convenient. I chose peace over her presence. Catherine, too, tried from afar, her messages filled with reminders of past favors and shared memories. I responded only once, calmly. I did everything I could. That's why I stopped. No further conversation was necessary. The point had been made. Boundaries don't require justification, only consistency. Even my parents, the ones who had once demanded conformity and silent endurance, became distant observers. I no longer felt the need to explain or negotiate. I was simply myself, in my space, with my life constructed on my own terms. That house, the one they all dreamt about, the one Madison obsessed over for years, was now my sanctuary. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about proving them wrong. It was about reclaiming what had been quietly stolen, the ability to live without compromise or apology. I realized that the life I had built wasn't defined by who I excluded or what I achieved materially. It was defined by the clarity, the freedom, and the control I finally possessed. Living without their interference allowed me to rediscover joy in small, ordinary acts, cooking a meal I enjoyed, laughing with friends, working on projects that mattered to me. I understood, in a way I never had before, that satisfaction is deeply personal. It cannot be borrowed or inherited. One evening, I walked through the empty guest room, the space that had once been a placeholder for expectations, obligations, and imagined crises. Now it was silent. The emptiness was intentional. I felt neither guilt nor loneliness, just control, just freedom. I understood that having space in your life is more important than having company who drains it. And in the quiet, I finally understood the magnitude of what I had done. Not because I bought a house, not because I became financially secure, but because I had refused to let the weight of others' betrayal define me. I had finally chosen myself, and that above all was victory. The final part began not with confrontation, but with peace. Months had passed since the last messages, the last visits, the last attempts by my ex-wife, sister, and parents to pull me back into their expectations. The house had fully become mine, not just in ownership, but in spirit. Every corner, every surface, every nook of 42 Maple Street whispered the truth I had learned over years of struggle. Freedom is earned, not given. I woke that morning early, coffee in hand, standing on the porch as the sun stretched over the neighborhood. There was no chaos, no judgment, no lingering sense of inadequacy. Only quiet, only choice, only control. I looked at the street, imagining the versions of myself who had been anxious, overworked, unseen. The weight I once carried, the guilt I once absorbed, it was gone. Madison, finally, seemed to have understood her role in the destruction she had helped create. Her messages stopped completely. I no longer feared a knock at the door. The woman who once belittled me, who had sought another for attention, who had treated our marriage as a comparison, was a chapter one had closed not with malice but with resolve. Catherine's intrusion ended with the single acknowledgement I had sent her. That boundary, firm and consistent, had taught even her that loyalty and love don't excuse betrayal or blame. My parents slowly receded into the background. perhaps realizing too late that the son they thought they could shape was no longer the boy who would shrink to meet their comfort. I felt no triumph over them, just understanding that some relationships, no matter how close, cannot survive imbalance and broken trust. The real victory, the lasting one, came in ordinary moments. Cooking dinner without complaint, riding my motorcycle through empty back roads without a destination, fixing shelves in the garage for no reason other than pleasure, sitting on the porch as the light shifted, feeling the quiet hum of life moving forward without interference. This was living. This was freedom. This was reclaiming a self I hadn't realized I'd lost. One night I invited a few friends over. Simple dinner, a little wine, laughter spilling into the open kitchen and living room. No performances, no comparisons, no judgment. I watched them interact, lighthearted and genuine, and felt a joy I hadn't known in years. For the first time, I understood that my life didn't need anyone's validation to be meaningful. The house, the money, the career, they were symbols, yes, but the real prize was clarity, knowing who I was, what I valued, and what I would no longer tolerate, even. The neighbors noticed, quietly, sometimes with awkward compliments, sometimes with curiosity. They recognized the man I had become. Someone steady, grounded, unapologetic, yet calm. I didn't need their approval, but it was satisfying to know that living authentically carried its own presence that could not be ignored. I often thought back to the moments that broke me. The betrayal by Madison, the blame from Catherine, the dismissal from my parents. Every pang of pain now seemed purposeful. It had driven me to extremes, yes, but those extremes had taught me endurance, clarity, and self-reliance. I had spent years being undervalued, belittled, and unseen, and now I stood not just visible, but uncheckable. And then there was the house itself. Walking through the rooms one evening, feeling the smooth granite under my fingers, the warmth of sunlight on polished hardwood, the quiet hum of life around me, I realized it wasn't revenge. It wasn't even proof. It was home, my home. Every brick, every beam, every corner was testimony not to spite, to perseverance, to patience, to survival. I had learned that sometimes the most powerful statements aren't made with words. They're made with action, with silence, with boundaries that cannot be breached, with doors that are closed for good. I had lived the proof, day by day, choice by choice. In the end, no one came back. No one changed overnight. No one suddenly saw the error of their ways. And that was fine, because I no longer needed anyone else to define my worth. I no longer needed apologies or explanations or validation. I was whole. I was free. I was finally living the life I had worked so hard to claim quietly, intentionally, and completely, on my own terms. And sometimes, when the sun hits the granite just right and the hardwood reflects it perfectly, I smile to myself. Not with pride, not with malice, just with satisfaction. Because the failure they once wrote off, the man they underestimated, is finally at peace. In 42 Maple Street, I have everything I need. This is not a story of revenge. It is a story of reclamation, of survival, of understanding that some doors are meant to stay closed forever, and that closing them for yourself is the greatest freedom of all.